Acclaimed NFT collector and OG, and now a luxury fashion mogul. Gmoney is back on our show. We've had him on about 11 months ago, and since then, wow, the world of Gmoney has exploded. From multi-million dollar collector to launching a multi-million dollar brand and community called Admit One. He's even featured in an Adidas commercial. It's great to have him back on the show today. We're going to go deep into the world of luxury fashion, into the world of NFTs, and into the world of Gmoney. Subscribe to the show, smash that like button, and let's get into all that and more. My fellow co-host, Stanley, how are you, my friend? Let's get into this today. I am excited to have one of our OG guests back on the show, and so much has happened since then. How are you, my man?
I'm doing great. I have to say that was probably one of the best intros that we've had on this show.
Thank you.
Let's bring G right on. G, you should be privileged because Yasi went all in on that intro. He blew you
Yeah.
up like you were like a fashion runway model over there.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I will say Yasi is just as enthusiastic in real life when we met last year. So I really, really appreciate the intro.
Oh, so Yasi actually knows what you look like.
Yeah.
One of the
One of the few.
Yeah, we had the pleasure of meeting at VCon, Stanley.
I know. We're good. We'll get into that story. I know what you look like because I think that's a story that our audience will actually enjoy. And I actually never told that story in the show. But let's get into Gmoney. G, what have you been up to for the last 11 months, man?
Man, so much. The last 11 months. So obviously, we did the Adidas NFT campaign, right? And Adidas came into the NFT space, which I thought was really exciting. And then, after that, when I first got into crypto, when I first got into the NFT space, I was like, my first thought was I want to do something with fashion in the metaverse. But at the time, and this was in like late 2020, I was just like, if people aren't hanging out in the metaverse, why are they going to buy clothes for the metaverse right now? So I was like, I thought it was like a few years out. Obviously, I was off in my timing, but like, it's interesting because like even like I say the entire NFT space, my thesis has been correct, but my timing has been off by like a factor of maybe like 10, right? Because like when I bought my CryptoPunk, and I wrote that Twitter thread, that was in early January of 2021. And I remember being like, yeah, I want to sell the first CryptoPunk at an auction like Sotheby's or Christie's in 5 years, right? I'm like, I'm going to sell this thing for $5 million in 5 years. And like, it had like, the Christie sale happened like 5 months later. So it was just like, wow, like my timing was way off. My thesis was very right, but my timing was off. But I think that's just a testament to how fast the space moves, and just, how much innovation is happening. And I think that happens when you're working on open source networks, right? Where it's like, somebody sees something cool and they're like, oh, why don't we tinker with it this way? And they don't have to go back and rebuild all that code from scratch, right? It's like you start building on top of these things. And I think that's what we're seeing in the NFT space as well, right? Where the meta of NFT projects a year and a half ago, a year ago, 6 months ago is just very different than things are now, right? Like I think, what is it now? Just this week, people are the free to earn or whatever that meme is that people have been pushing with the daikus, right? Which I'm still trying to wrap my head around what that is exactly. But I think you just start seeing the evolution of things, which people are just building on top of each other, right? So when I did the Adidas stuff, I was like, okay, now is the time. Like let's really focus on, just something that I want to see as a consumer, right? Is like I was like, I want to launch my own brand, of my own fashion brand, because these are just things that I personally want to see, and I'm hoping others want to see them as well, right? So one is the aesthetic, right? Like creating an aesthetic that I want to see, and then two is getting that verifiable scarcity, right? Is like, if I'm spending a lot of money on something, I'd like to know, is it one of 1,000 or one of 100,000, right? Because that affects the resale value, the aftermarket value, and all these things. So, and then gamifying it once the product gets out in the real world. So those are the things that I've been really focused on pretty much for the last year. really heads down and focus on, even though obviously the drop just happened last week. This is stuff that I've been working on for a really long time, and I'm excited to start bringing it out into the world.
So you've been working on this for now almost a year, and the space has moved much quicker than you anticipated, even yourself. But let's talk about, before we get into the luxury brand that you've launched and all about it and the mechanics and verifiable and everything that makes it so interesting, let's just talk about Adidas and brands like Nike that have come into the space that you've now collaborated with. Do you think this is a trend that we're going to see accelerate, and every fashion brand is going to have some kind of NFT offering? Is it going to be across any brand that we know? And how do you see it playing out? You're at the coalface of what these brands are discussing.
I think every brand, every consumer-facing brand will be involved with NFTs at some point over the next decade. Wow. That's my thesis, right? Because it's like, when you think about it, everything in the real world is an NFT, right? So as we move towards more digital lives, and like our children and our grandchildren will most definitely spend more time in front of a screen in digital environments than we are, the same way that we spend more time in front of a screen than our parents and grandparents. Like, you're going to have a way to represent digital ownership, right? And that's going to come through NFTs, right? You need a decentralized ledger so that you're not necessarily at the whims of violating the terms of service, right? Like, if I earn a bunch of Starbucks points, right? Because I'm a loyalty, I'm part of the rewards program, and I somehow violate the terms of service the way it is right now, you know, like, I just lose all my points and I can no longer be a loyalty customer, right? And that's a crude example, but like, it's like, ultimately, like, those are rewards that you've earned, right? Like, you know, so why, if you want to use them as loyalty points, you should be free to. If you want to sell them, right? The same thing with airline miles, I think, right? Like, I just think we're going to see so many different manifestations of this, right? Like, that the possibilities are unlimited, and we're really just at like the really, really early stages of this.
So, G, I got a question, because I think you bring up a good point, and I agree with you about everything that you're saying. And then we have, like you said, right? Like, we've been in this thing really for a little less than 2 years, right? And the market is consistently changing, and we're talking about it's changing by the day. And like, you know, no royalties, yes royalties. Here's a new platform. Here's this. Everything is free. Everything is not. Like, how does that kind of affect what's actually kind of the long-term goal and the long-term vision of this? Because as you're describing it, I'm like, I 100% agree with you, right? I do think all these brands are going to come in. But kind of the micro, the day-to-day of this is like, holy shit, like, you know, how many more obstacles are going to come in? Like, how quickly is this change? Is this going to survive? Is this a long-term solution? Is it not? What are your thoughts there?
I think we're still in the process of learning, right? And I think like people, we're experimenting with models that work and models that don't work, right? And so and one of the reasons why I like educating, and I apologize for the background noise. My neighbors are doing construction, and there's no quiet place in my house. So I apologize for that. But I think we're just in a learning process, right? The same thing that we went through that with DeFi, right? Where it's like, you know, you have forks of forks of forks coming up every day for months at a time. There's going to be something that works. There's going to be something that finds product market fit. I mean, I can make an argument that NFTs are probably the product market fit for crypto right now, right? Because it expands those use cases, right? Where all of a sudden, you know, 5 years ago, you didn't really have creatives. You didn't have people like some of the best creatives in the world really looking at crypto, because crypto was just a bunch of money games, right? It's like, buy this token, this protocol is going to change the future, buy it now before everyone comes on the protocol, right? And now it's almost like we're starting to see those use cases, right? So it's like, you know, you have NFT projects that are like proof of concept for crypto, because people want to collect things, because we naturally collect things, right? Like, when we're all little kids, we don't need somebody to like teach us how to collect like seashells when you go to the beach. We just naturally do it, right? Like, this is just things that humans naturally do. So it's part of our process, right? And so to me, it's like, we're just going to go through different iterations till, you know, and what works for one project won't work for all, right? And I think we've kind of seen that. And there's going to be different ways to go to skin that cat. I think the one thing I would advise builders, and I know I go through this myself, is like, I think there's like a healthy balance between listening to the community and taking feedback and making sure that like you execute your vision, right? Because like even with like the rollout of Admit One and 90cc and all that is like, you know, I originally wanted to launch the brand like 2 weeks after Admit One came out, right? And here we are, like, you know, it took a month and a half after, right? And that's just because of like holdups in the real world. Like there's you know, and there's nothing more that you know, supply chain issues and you know, things get slowed down. Yeah, as much as I'd love to move at the speed of light, you know, I can only go so fast without necessarily like getting slowed down by, you know, manufacturing and stuff like that. So, you know, I have my vision of the way I want to execute. I think, you know, it reminds me a lot of like when I bought my punk and people didn't understand it and people were like, oh, you're an idiot. Why would you ever buy this? Right click save. And now here we are, you know, less than 24 months later and people are spending millions of dollars on pictures as is, right? And so, you know, to me, it's like, I don't expect everyone to totally understand what I'm trying to do here. But that's fine, because if everyone did understand it, then the opportunity also wouldn't be there, right?
That's true. And one of the things that I don't fully understand, I would love for you to explain in, you mentioned kind of we were chasing money games, and you've been involved in a new game called the Internet Game. And that seems quite pretty much out there in terms of the bleeding edge of what's happening in this industry. Tell us a bit about what is Internet Game, and then we're going to go into what does that do for the Admit One world and 90cc.
Yeah, so Internet Games, I'm super, super excited about. I'm hosting, they had season one, it might have been in March. It was in early this year. And it was like, kind of like their premise was like, okay, we want to do Squid Games, but online. How do we do that, right? And so I think they might have had 3,000 entries or maybe 2,000 entries. I don't remember the exact number. And they were like, it was all like single player games that was almost like, you know, ways, obviously you couldn't cheat, but you had like one ticket per entry, right? And so it's like, you could buy as many tickets as you want. And that was just like, if you got eliminated, you were done. Kind of like, you know, Squid Games on chain, right? So like one winner at the end. They bought, I think the first two prizes, I think, were Bored Apes. You know, and when I originally met them, I think I met them in January or February. They came to me and, you know, I think like 10 minutes into their pitch, I'm like, all right, stop the pitch. Like, I get it. And then I just started drilling them like on a bunch of things. It was like, I don't know if you guys remember Trivia HQ from like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but that was like a huge phenomenon, right? Like where every day at 9 p.m. you tune in, you play, and like you have a shot at winning the prize. But if like multiple people won, you'd end up winning like $1 or something, right? But like it was fun. You weren't necessarily doing it for the money, right? And when you look at like, you know, primetime game shows like Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, that have been on for decades, right? Like Deal or No Deal, these games that people watch for the entertainment factor, you want to go on and play, and like they try to make them interactive, right? Because now like you see like with the text this number, text this code to this number, and you know, you get a chance to win something, but like it's not fully there yet. And it's like the tech exists to play these kind of fun little mini games and have like a real big cash prize, so that like, you know, you can have like $100 entry and you could win like what are Bored Apes at right now? Like $150,000 prize, right? And that's pretty cool, right? And it's like anybody across the world can enter because it's a purely digital asset. So when these guys were talking about it, I'm like, wow, I'm like, this is really cool. You want to talk about onboarding masses? It's through stuff like this, right? Stuff that's exciting, stuff that's fun, stuff where it's not like, okay, I spent $100 now, you know, you're expected to provide me utility forever, right? Because I just, that's not a viable business model long term. I think it works great in a bull market, right? Because it's very Ponzi-nomical, I guess is the right way to say it, right? But it's just not a long-term business model, right? And so I think by Internet Games, when I spoke to them in January and I was like, I would love to invest, and then they asked me to be an advisor, and I was like, you know, I love the concept and the idea, because what the utility is fun, right? And they'll tell that to you, right? Like the utility is you have an option, you have an opportunity to win a big prize, and you have fun along the way, right? And I think the next step with that is probably like the entertainment value of watching it, right? Like I want to see, you know, and like as the host, you know, myself and Leah Lamar will be co-hosting in about 2 weeks, the final games. We're going to be watching and commentating on the play live, right? So like once we get into the top whatever, like, you know, it'd almost be like watching a sport, and I'm going to be one of the commentators, which I think is like another value, right? Because like I suck at video games, but I wouldn't mind watching somebody that's good at video games and like have a vested interest, right? And like just be entertained by that, right? We all like watching competition, whether it's sports or you know, like anything, spelling bees, right? Like spelling bees are on ESPN and all these different kind of sports. So I think it's just something that humans like to be part of, like that drama. And I honestly think internet game is really cool, right? Because it's like the more people that enter, the more money that goes towards the prize pool. Because like so I think first place gets a Bored Ape, but like from the money raised, 60% will be going to buying other prizes that the community can decide, right? So like through Discord votes. So it's like if you own one, if you own a ticket, you go in there, you cast your vote, and then you decide is like, do you want like just like 3 big prizes, or do you want a bunch of smaller prizes? I just think it's really cool.
How many people are competing now in the internet games?
Let's see.
That's going on.
We're getting
what are the kind of games?
Live update. How many people are there?
Right now, looks like there's 2,000 holders. There's close to 4,000 tickets. So 4,000 entries. 4,000
tickets. So you got a 1 in 4,000 chance if you play these games and win them of winning a Bored Ape for like $100.
Yeah. And so like, really cool. And they're games of skill. So it's not. I don't really. There's like, it's like I think 5 or 6 mini games, and it's not just games of chance. So it is games of skill, and you kind of. So like I think the person that won season 1 bought 50 tickets, and I think the person that came in second place actually got in second place with 1 ticket. Like I think they were like, and like I think the interesting thing is also like this adds to the gamification in between each game, so that like you get points for each game. And so then in between the games, so like let's say you get like 100 points in game 1, and that puts you in like the top 50, right? Then before game 2, you can sell that ticket to somebody else, and so they can buy your spot, right? So then like at some point, like you can sell it and almost like cash out and give somebody else that option if they're like, oh man, like if I was in the top 50, like I would definitely win. So there's like a surrender value, right? Almost. And there's going to be like an in-game player economy going on while you're playing this game, which I think is really cool. Like even in my Discord, people are just hopping in. Like we created a thread where people are just talking about strategy of like, okay, like do we band all our tickets together and split the pool prize, or, you know, like, is it every man for himself or whatever? Talk strategy. It's really cool. Like, I will say this from every time I post on internet game, people that have played season 1 were like they're like so excited. They're like, this is the most fun thing I've done in the space. And I think that is really exciting to hear, because again, it's not about crypto. It's like, this would be fun, whether it's crypto or not. The fact that you have the option to win like a huge cash prize is like a bonus, right?
Well, I think 2 things you said that kind of stand out, right? Like you have an opportunity to onboard the masses, right?
Right.
And that's, everybody wants to play a game. Everyone wants to win a prize. Everybody kind of wants, and YouTubers have hundreds of millions of views than people watch them play Fortnite. So
yeah, I mean, I do it myself, right? Like I will just watch like sick Fortnite players play because it's just entertaining, right? So it's like if you're watching somebody play and it's good, there's entertainment value there.
I love that the utility that you said, you know, our utility is fun. That is something that, you know, we're talking in the industry. What's the utility? What's the utility? Fun is forever. And fun is priceless, and fun brings on everyone. So it definitely has the scope, like of the name, to take on the internet and have everyone around the world playing at the same time. I love it. I think it's really disruptive in what can be done.
And honestly, like I think this is one of those things that I feel like it's going to be like this snowball that's building as more people find out about it in the space. And then, you know, it's just like one of those things. Like if I'm a sick video game player and you're telling me over the course of a week, I have the chance to win something that's worth a couple $100,000 with like $100 entry, right? That's a Cinderella story, right? We see that in sports all the time. You see that in tournaments all the time. and those are cool and fun things where it's like, yeah, you know.
And is it any game?
I'm sorry?
Is it any game? Is it established games, or are they creating their own games?
I believe it's like there's similar games to kind of stuff we see out there. So I know there's one that's very similar to Super Mario Smash Brothers, where I think it's kind of like you have to bump people off the platform, and last person standing wins the round. So like there is skill involved, right? So it's like I think there's an element of single player games and then multiplayer games. So I just think it's exciting. I just think it's really exciting.
It's very exciting. But I think a lot of people don't realize that, like what you said, the tech is what makes it happen, right?
Right.
The tech is there. You're bringing people from all different walks of life together to play a game. And right. I think when people talk about, NFTs, they talk about, a JPEG on the internet, they talk about crypto being fake and all this thing. But the tech is there, right? And I think, like guys like us who are sitting here and are passionate about the industry, it's really the tech that's the driving force, that you're able to, whatever you could think of from a creative standpoint of view, you could then go build it, and then a bunch of people come in and can actually, have fun there.
And to that point, right, is like, it's a worldwide thing, right? Because if you think about this from like, even let's say something like Trivia HQ, it's only available in certain, territories, right? Where you probably need to KYC and there's regulations. So like, if you're in a country where it's banned, you can't play, right? But because of the nature of crypto, it's international, right? Like it's you don't need to KYC, right? Because it's by wallet, right? And like, I think this adds the element of like anybody could win, right? Like, somebody in India could win just as much as somebody in the United States, which I think is super interesting, which to your point is like, it's all established by the tech.
So tell us about the new brand.
90cc. So this is the shirt, I'm wearing it. I've been wearing samples of this shirt for a few months now, and I love it. It really stemmed from the fact of, there were a couple of things that I really wanted to see from a consumer in the space, right? The first was I wanted to have, like, I'm known for my CryptoPunk, right? Like when you look me up on Twitter, you see my CryptoPunk, on Instagram, you see it. But that does, and I love my CryptoPunk, I love my identity. But that doesn't necessarily mean I want to walk around with a picture of my CryptoPunk on a t-shirt everywhere I go. That's just not how I dress in the real world. And what I have found was me personally, I want to showcase that I'm a crypto native in the real world without necessarily having to wear an aesthetic that I might not like, right? So it's like, I don't want to put my CryptoPunk on a shirt, but I still want to signal that I'm crypto native, and I want to still buy a high quality product, right? So it's like, of course, I can walk into a Dior store, a Louis Vuitton store, or whatever, but I can walk out wearing that shirt, but that won't signal that I'm crypto native to anybody, right? I still would have to be like, hey, look at like my OpenSea profile, look at all my NFTs, like, look at how cool I am on the internet, right? But like, to me, it's like, what I hope to achieve with 90cc is a way to deliver a high quality product that's on par with your heritage brands, but can also signal to the real world that you are a crypto native without you having to necessarily be all in their face with like a cartoon or something, right? And it's just a different aesthetic. So that was one that I wanted to solve for. Two was, as somebody that spends a lot of money on maybe like a shirt or a handbag or whatever, sneakers, whatever it is, I would like to know how many of them are existence, right? Is this one of 1,000 or one of 100,000, right? Like I said earlier. So that was two, right? And then three is, once the product gets out into the real world, to me, that's when you can start having a lot of fun with gamification and getting people to wear it, right? And to be proud to wear it. So that I'm not ready to share much on that yet, because we still have a couple weeks for delivery. But to me, that's like the most exciting part. But like, steps 1 and 2 were integral in order for step 3 to happen, right? Because if I created a design that nobody, wanted to wear or nobody really liked, then, steps 2 and 3 are kind of worthless, right? So it all started with the design and then implementing these things that me personally wants to see in the real world, that it's like, I don't think this exists out there, so I'm just going to go out and make it.
So you've made this brand and you launched it with a pretty interesting mechanism and way to bring it to the world. Tell us about the thinking behind that and why that's such a game changer.
Which mechanism specifically?
You have this one kind of authentication of supply, so people know that how many are in circulation. You've got this ability for it to sit in a vault. Talk through all of the stuff that drives the kind of thinking that you're incorporating into luxury and fashion. These mechanics that are kind of crypto native and maybe not so apparent to people on why that's such a big thing. That now these two things are combining.
Right. Yeah. So, first off, there was the allow list was for admit one holders, right? The only people that could mint it were admit one holders. And the reason why I did that, and, obviously when I released admit one, I was very deep into the planning of 90cc. And it was like, okay, if I'm going to be launching product, right? And this is one of the things that happens with sneaker drops, right? Is like, drops, a pair of Yeezys comes out tomorrow and it sells out in 5 seconds. But because there's no transparency, you don't know, like, was it all bought by like 5 people and they're the ones that are reselling it, or was it actually distributed out there, right? But because of the nature of blockchain, there's a lot of transparency there as to, how many people, how many unique wallets have this, right? And if they do want to buy it, they have to buy multiple passes in order to do it, right? So I thought that to me was like, part of what releasing admit one into the wild was to kind of create that allow list so that I wouldn't have to create it every single time, because anybody that's done any drop, right? Like, your number one fear is getting botted, right? And, if you get botted, that kind of ruins the entire community out of the gate. So the best way that you can solve for that is by creating an allow list. And, that's basically what admit one became for 90cc, right? And so when I then we were talking about the mechanics of the drop, it's like, okay, admit one, there was a 48-hour window where everyone in admit one could mint one, right? Guaranteed mint if they wanted one. And then there was a 24-hour window where if you wanted to mint more, you then had that option and that opportunity, right? And that sold out in 113 seconds, which blew me away. I thought it would happen within an hour and a half. And the fact that it happened so quickly was really humbling, right? And so I thought that was really cool. And so what we sold was NFTs, right? When we shot our lookbook, we took the 6 best photos that we liked that were representative of the entire look, and we made them NFTs. The lookbook was shot by Justin Aversano, who's a dear friend of mine and an amazing photographer in the NFT space. It was stylized by Simon Rasmussen, who is a very well-known stylist within the fashion world. And the models that we used were all members of the NFT space, members of the community, right? And so that to me was like, okay, this is like us showcasing our brand with our community members, shot by like a really well-known photographer and a good friend within the space. So each different portrait, each different look represents a different size, right? So that, maybe because I wanted to implement that idea of gamification from day one, right? It's like, you have 3 options upon mint, right? Do you mint the size that you want to wear? Do you mint the size that you want to flip? Or do you mint the size where you like the actual photography the most, right? So, as the end user, you get to choose how do you want to participate in the 90cc ecosystem, right? So that was step 1. Step 2 is now, in about 3 or 4 weeks, hopefully, depending on supply chain, right? When the product gets delivered to the vault in 4K, who's our vaulting partner, you will then get airdropped an NFT, which represents your shirt in their vault. And at that point, you have a second decision to make. Do you keep it in the vault and keep it in mint condition so that it's never worn? Or do you take physical delivery of that shirt and then, maybe get, special perks or something for wearing it in public, right? So then you as the user, you have to decide is like, do I keep it in mint condition and hopefully this becomes a collectible over time? And because it's in mint condition, it will go up in value? Or do I think I can get more value by wearing it in the real world?
This adds a whole dimension between like the consumer, the user, the brand, and like how it plays out in real time, which I don't think anyone has ever been able to do before. Like, how do you reward people for either wearing the brand, and what's going to happen down the line if you do that? Almost like internet game. Like, you can play the game by wearing the brand, or you can play the game by holding it back and trading it. And you, as the kind of company behind it, the brand behind it, can start figuring out, well, how do we want to shape the narrative of this brand? How do we want to bring people into it? Do we want more people wearing? Do we want people reducing supply? It's ingenious in how it can all play out over time. And I don't know if other brands are already on this type of pulse of what you're doing. Like you said earlier, you're kind of 2 steps ahead. But I can see the kind of possibilities of what you're doing with this. It's incredible. So sorry for interrupting. I'll let you continue.
And I think
excited.
I think you just convinced me to buy a second one. I was
love
lucky enough to mint one, and now I'm like, shit, I want to have one to wear, and I want to have one to keep in the vault. And
like over time, right? Like that, the shirts in mint condition, it's like that's deflationary, right? Because, let's say, 400 remain vaulted out of the gate, right? Then that number is going to only go down, because I'm hoping that at some point people are just like, okay, like I want to wear this in the real world. Like I'm going to unvault it and wear it. Right. So that number like will only be deflationary, because there's only ever going to be 1,111 iteration ones, right? Like I'm never going to make this colorway in this pattern again. Because that, like, for the same reasons that like the original Supreme box logo is worth significantly more than like other box logos that are, same concept, but just different colorways. And like, people know, it's like, if you know, right? Like people are like, oh, I know Supreme. But if you're really deep in the Supreme ecosystem, you're like, oh yeah, that's a very rare shirt. Like that one's more rare than this one. Like that's, if I'm really into the Supreme culture, I want to buy that shirt. But, but there's also like options for everybody else, right?
Yeah, it's collectibles 101, right? I mean, I think if you had the opportunity to pull a Mickey Mantle rookie card and put it in the vault right away and have it sit there, I think everybody would take that option, right? Because it's going to be in
I appreciate
condition.
You comparing me to Mickey Mantle.
Well, I'm trying to give you a lot of props, but yeah, I mean, look, I think that's where, like, I come from sports cards, and I think, and we talked about it on the show a million times, the fact that it's limited amounts, right? The fact that there's a decision to be made, and you don't want to make the wrong decision. And even if you did make the wrong decision, it's still deflationary, right? Because now there's only a certain amount of those shirts sitting in the vault or being worn. So it cuts it in half, or whatever the percentage is. It makes sense, and I think it's smart. And I think that's what collectors want. That's why collectors collect. That's why people buy limited edition Rolexes.
Right. And to that point, right, is like, the interesting thing with sports cards, right, and I'm sure this changes as the tech evolves over time, is like, right now, let's say there's, 50 PSA 10s of like the LeBron James Topps rookie or whatever have you, right? But like an extra one could pop up tomorrow, or somebody could be like, oh yeah, like I have 50 of them sitting in my basement, right? So it's like, you have an idea of what the scarcity is, but you really don't know, right? And it's like new 100%. Ones could pop up, and like they could be fakes, right? They could be very good fakes. You probably know that better than me.
But it also solves a big question that I was wondering when I saw you guys launch this, was like, well, if I buy the shirt and I wear it, then I'm gonna, like, over time, it's a shirt. It's gonna erode, and I won't be able to wear it anymore. And I'm destroying hundreds of dollars of value. I get the utility of wearing the brand. But what you're saying is, actually, by wearing it, you actually may be rewarded for doing so, not just from the utility you get of signaling you're in crypto, you're a high fashion person, you know what's going on in culture, but there's also potentially rewards down the line for representing the brand and for being that and for bringing it to the market.
Right. Yeah. And I think it comes down to the question of, for every brand, right? Like, and I think this is true for pretty much all businesses, right? Is like 80% of the profits come from 20% of like verticals, right? And so, 80% of, let's say, customer value will probably come from 20% of, the customer base, right? And so it's like, as a brand, right? Like, And I'm sure like a lot of these luxury brands and every brand in general is probably like, this is our target demo because this is where we have like the most valuable customer, right? And the question becomes is your most valuable customer the person that spends the most money or the person that reps the brand the most, right? Like, I think that's a very interesting question, right? And I think now that we have like this capability of having a networked product out in the wild, I think we're going to be able to get a lot more information on the relationship between the end user and the brand, as well as like how that relationship can be increased, right?
And I mean, I guess how you did the allow list and started at Mint One was very smart as well. I was lucky enough to find you at VCon, where I knew you were there. We were kind of going back and forth on Instagram, and then I'm like, oh, I don't really know what G looks like, but I'm going to see because I'm going to hear him speak. They bring out this big curtain, can't see what you look like, what you're wearing, and I'm like, it's all right. I'm gonna find this guy backstage. I go backstage and I'm like, I don't know who he is. I have no idea. I hit you up. You're like, yeah, I'm backstage. Can't find you. You don't get back to me. So then my buddy texts me. He's like, you just posted a picture. This is the outfit he's wearing. I found you backstage, and I'm like, what's up? And the first thing you said to me is like, how did you know who I am? And I said, don't worry about it. I have my sources. But I think it was definitely great to meet in real life. And, you took my phone and you said, here's some alpha. And you gave me the POAP, which I had no idea what you were doing. And it gave me the Admit One ticket, right?
I gave you a POAP, right, which was proof that we met, right? Is basically an on-chain autograph, and that put you on the allow list for Admit One.
You gave him a $20,000 present.
Well, first of all,
let's put it in dollar terms.
Well, I mean, listen, by that point, right, I knew it was launching like 3 days later, right, 4 days later. So the wheels were in motion at that point, and I told you, I'm like, here's the alpha. I didn't tell you anything else. I think you asked me. I'm like, just keep an eye on my socials, right? Like that. I think that's all I said.
No, but I think the way you did it, right? And listen, I saw you give it out to a few other people there, and nobody had any idea. And I don't even know. Some people I'm sure didn't even mint it, right? Because it didn't mint out, right? It didn't mint out.
It's funny because I'd obviously been giving out that POAP for probably close to 8 or 9 months at that point. And there were a lot of people that hit me up once the Admit One mint went live. They're like, oh my God, you give me a POAP like, 6 months ago. Like, can I get on the list? I'm like, no, dude, like you had to have minted it like within like 14 days of when I gave it to you. And like, the allow list is already set, right? Like we already took the snapshot.
You had your chance.
Yeah. But it was just one of those things. It's just like, if I'm going to run around and tell people, right, it's like, I think it's what happens a lot in the space where, because people are trying to pump the price of something or they want the excitement to build, they're like, no, this is going to give you alpha or blah, 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 whatever. Right. And all that excitement builds. It's like, I wanted to do this as low key as possible because I wanted it to be as organic as possible. Right. Because like if I went around telling people a year ago, be like, hey, if you meet me and I give you a POAP, you're going to get something big later. Then like people would have been farming them. People would have been like trying to crack it or whatever. To me, this was the most organic way to build a community because I also didn't want bots. I didn't want one person to mint like 10% of the supply, right? It's like, I wanted it to be very well distributed. Like I'm super proud of the fact that we have 1,000 NFTs and 890 something unique holders, right? Unique wallets, which is like, I think insane distribution because most communities don't have that kind of distribution out of the gate. And that to me is something that I really wanted to solve for.
And honestly, I'm in that Discord and it is one of the best Discords that I've been in because it is.
Really? Thank you. It means a lot.
No, it really is. I mean, and we were in there the other day. We were talking about like golf, and I think it was the day that your T-shirt launched, and you could just tell that all the people in that Discord are, genuinely interested in the space moving forward. Right? It's not it's not flippers. It's not, you know, it's real kind of real conversation, real meaningful conversation. And everybody, obviously, you know, they have a, you know, a benefit. They want your brand to succeed. They believe in it. But I think more than that, they believe in the space. And every conversation that I've seen that happens in there, it's people that are trying to move the space forward, and it's not a bunch of shit talking and BS that you see.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I was really, really cognizant of, right? Is like, and that's why there's no sales bot channel, even though people wanted that. I'm like, no, I don't want the focus here to be on price, right? Like, it's like, if you're focused on price, like, I hope you make money. I hope you buy, I hope you sell it higher, whatever. But that's not really my concern. My concern is to get a group of people together that want to do something that's going to be, you know, hopefully we look back at this 10, 20 years from now and be like, holy shit, like what was going on in there changed the future for the better, right? That's kind of ultimately what I want. So the fact that you say that makes me feel really, really good. Really.
No, and
really,
I really mean it. It's cool shit. I have one last question for you on my side. I mean, your life has, I'm assuming, significantly changed in the last year. We see you on socials, traveling the world, you know, Paris fashion show, pictures with
living the good life.
Well, I think, you know, like I'm assuming, you know, big brands are coming to you and say, hey, you obviously know what you're talking about, you know what you're doing. Do you like how do you take that all in? Like, what is it surreal? Is it believable? Are you in grind mode, or is it just like sometimes you're like, holy shit, this is really kind of happening to me?
I'll say this, like the pressure, like definitely is high, right? Because especially now, because I've been building out, one, my organization, two, I have this community that I want to deliver for. So I'd say the pressure is definitely increased. I very much operate like it's crazy because like, and I think it was Emmett Smith that said this quote where he was like, the reason why he didn't really do touchdown dances was because he expected to score a touchdown, right? Like he expected to be in there every time he got the ball. So it was just like, yeah, like this is just business, right? Like this is I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And like, I very much operate with that where it's like, it's fun when the Adidas drop actually happened. And like, you know, as a team, we were like really, really happy with it. And I was just like, all right, cool. This is amazing. All right, what's next? Like, what are we going to do next? Because yeah, like this was expected. Like we were like, I was expecting this to happen. Now let's go do the next big thing. Like let's go crush it again. So I'm definitely in grind mode because I definitely don't think we're anywhere near the penetration that we need to see happen. And I think we're just so early on in the growth curve, and so many industries are still going to get, like, nothing's been disrupted yet. Like, you know, art is just starting to get disrupted, right? And, you know, here we are 2 years ago from when like really art, the art market really started taking off in the NFT space. And this is about to happen in every vertical on the planet. So like, you know, it's, you know, I'll sit back and relax and be like, okay, cool. Like that was awesome. But it's like, all right, what's the next big thing? Like, what are we working on next? And I've been fortunate enough to be having such good high level conversations that, you know, are really exciting. And like, when I get off of them, like, and I'll ping my team, I'm like, hey, like this person at this place just reached out to me. Like, what do you think we could do with them? What do you guys want to see? Right. Like what can we do that's exciting? So, but and also it's like the opportunity to say no, right? Because there's so many people that ping me on stuff that I'm just like, I mean, that's cool. It's just not really, you know, authentic to me or what I want to work on. I can refer you to somebody that maybe is more in line with your values, but like, it's just not exactly what I want to do. Right. And so I think having that opportunity to say no has been fun. I think the fact that it's happening to me now, as opposed to maybe 10 or 20 years ago when I was a little younger, I think has definitely helped, right? In it not getting to my head, because I know how hard life can be, right? That like there are ups and there are downs. And, you know, like I think it's funny because I have a trading background, right? And we always say that like, if you're a trader and you're just getting started and you're immediately successful out of the gate, that's probably the worst possible thing that can happen to you, because then you think that success is guaranteed, right? Like when you grind it out and you're like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm not sure if I can survive the learning curve. That gives you that grit to kind of go out there and go through the motions every single day. even if you're not getting the results that you want to see. So, you know, I think if this had happened to me when I was really young, you know, I probably would have squandered it away by this point. I think that it's happening to me a little older in my life, that like I have the experience and knowledge that like life isn't always roses and whatever, roses and something, right? Smelling good. I don't know. Like
roses and caviar and champagne.
Yeah, roses and
champagne dreams. There you go.
There we go. There we go. Well, congratulations, my man. I think it's well deserved. You went into the space head on. You put your heart and soul into it, and you're always accessible to speak to people about why you think this is the future. So congratulations on the launch of 90cc. My last question is, why the name? Where's the inspiration behind that?
Yep. So 90cc, whenever I send my wallet address to people and they want to send me money, I know my wallets by the last 4 digits, right? Because I always copy and paste, and I make sure that I copy and paste the last 4 digits, so you have the entire wallet address. And so I was like, yeah, like, you know, what's more crypto native than naming the brand after the wallet that's the source of truth, right? And so the last 4 digits are the wallet that acts as the provenance of all the products that we put out there, right? So the NFTs that are linked to the physical are, you know, they come through the 90cc wallet. So that to me was like, yeah, like this is, you know, it's not intimidating that if you don't know crypto, you're just like, all right, that's just like a cool, like new brand. But if you do know, you're like, oh shit, that's the wallet. That's the source of truth. Like if I want to verify that this came from it, like, you know, oh shit, this is it.
I think that's genius. And I think the fact that you thought about these things, right? That just shows that's how you build a brand, right? Mm-hmm. Every nook and cranny, everything is thought of. There's kind of strategy behind everything, and there's creative behind everything. And that's like when you're, you know, picking stocks or buying NFTs or whatever it might be, like as an investor, that's what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking for the operator to be very thoughtful and somebody that is literally sleeping, breathing, eating this brand, this business. And just like that point alone, if you were at a pitch meeting pitching me on your company, that's kind of what would make it stand out.
Like, take your money.
It clicks, right? It clicks and it makes sense. So kudos to you, bro.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it. And I also think that, like, you know, my background in finance and understanding businesses, to your point, right, is like, you know, I've invested in over 100 projects in the last year and a half. Like I know what I look for in founders, and I know what to look for in businesses, right? Like I've seen businesses scale from, you know, a few tens of millions to billions of dollars, just trading public equities and seeing, you know, what gets done right, what doesn't get done right, what could a founder have done better, right? And so, you know, I think a lot of that also adds in, right? Because I think, you know, business is creativity and also like financial acumen, right? And it's like one thing to be a creative, but if you can't like execute on a budget and understand that, then you know, you have just as terrible issues as if you're not a creative, right?
One last question, and we'll let you go. Give us some alpha. Give us. You know.
Well, we've got the alpha. Admit 1, 9DCC.
No, but I want to.
How much more alpha do you want?
I want to give me 1 or 2 projects that you're bullish on. You know,
I mean, besides 90cc, like besides
obviously besides 90cc, we spent 47 minutes on 90cc. We're all bullish.
Okay, I mean, listen, I love Squiggles. I sound like a broken record. I just think, you know, Squiggles, I think hit the floor. I think it started to pump recently because I think people have been tracking Kevin Rose starting to buy in bulk. I think long term, I think Snowfro is going to go down as, you know, one of the leaders of the generative art movement. I'm blessed to have him as a friend in my life and doing something cool there. I think here's your alpha. His Twitter post earlier this week on Monday, talking about art blocks as a platform was very interesting. I think people should keep an eye out for that. Like I know people hopped in the Discord and we were chatting about it, but I'm
say
excited.
It one more time for the people with short attention spans.
Yeah, I mean, Snowfro put out a Twitter post on like, you know, Artbox as a platform and the future of just generative things in general. And in one of the posts on the threads, he mentions 90cc, and I think it's really interesting. I'll leave it at
something
that.
interesting
There might be
coming
something in the
there.
works.
Something might be coming there. There we go. We also know Snowpro is doing a mint for
crypto Mexicans. Is that what they're calling them?
Crypto Mexicans, exactly. It's doing something new, so that'll be interesting. Excited to see what comes from there. Gmoney, always great to have you on the show. Been a tremendous 11 months. We look forward to having you on in 11 months' time and being even more tremendous and seeing what's coming on. We gotta make it more.
I've been it's funny because you guys were hitting me up to come on, and I was like, I just don't really have anything to talk about. I'm like, because I think even after Admit 1, I was like, just give me like another few weeks, and like then I'll have a lot to talk about, right? Because like I think especially after Admit 1 dropped, I was still just holding too much info back because I didn't want to tease the brand before it was too early. But now again, like I think in a few months' time, I think once the product starts getting out in the wild, I think people will start seeing a little closer to the vision that I'm trying to do.
Wonderful.
Awesome, brother. We wish you all the best, and everybody knows where to find Gmoney. Just look for that ape on Twitter. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. We had some fun. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks for having me on.